What are my political passions and what drives me? Really, it's quite simple. I'm a massive advocate for social justice, so that means whenever I see wrong, I want to make it right. I'll stand up for the underdog, and I'll stand up for issues that often won't be picked up by the major parties, and I'll give you an example of this. In 2016, remote area nurse Gal Woodford was murdered while she was on a call out attending to a patient in remote outback South Australia. The community was outraged about this, and it was only through advocacy from me and my party that we saw in South Australia a version of Gal's Law implemented. But we're not finished with that yet, because that's only in South Australia, and in fact that law isn't even in effect yet because the government is still consulting on it. And so what I want to see is a national approach to Gal's Law. And when you vote for me and you vote for Centre Alliance, you're going to be voting for a party that really has South Australia's interests at heart and knows when we need to take issues national. One of my proudest achievements when I was in the Senate was negotiating the passage of Carly's Law. For those who don't know Carly Ryan and what this law is about, Carly Ryan was 15 years old when she was online and she thought she met the love of her life. He was an 18-year-old drummer called Brandon. In reality, Brandon was a 50-plus-year-old man sitting behind a computer pretending to be this young person. Carly fell in love, and this man ended up coming to South Australia and pretended to be Brandon's stepfather. Sadly, Carly was murdered by this man, and she was in fact Australia's first victim of an online predator. In Parliament, with the help of the Nick Xenophon team and the other major parties, we passed a law that now means if you're an adult and you lie about your age online to a child and you try to meet that child, you will be arrested. This is a massive win for parents, for children, for anybody in the community who's concerned about online safety, but our battle isn't done. We know, and I know from my discussions with AFP officers and others who work in the child protection space, that online predators are getting more and more devious and more cunning about the ways that they want to try and groom our children, and that's why we have a responsibility to ensure that our laws are keeping pace to make sure we can clamp down on those types of behaviours. There's a few really important environmental issues facing South Australia at the moment. The first is plans to drill in the Great Australian Bight. Now, we know that this is just too dangerous. Too many people feel that the science isn't good enough, the remediation plans aren't clear enough, and really the public does not want to see this happen. And so in our party, in Centre Alliance, you will trust us to fight for the Bight. In relation to another environmental issue, there is of course the Murray-Darling River system and what we are seeing in the upper states in terms of over-allocation, taking more water than they should, what could be described as perhaps irresponsible uses of our water. And because we're at the end of the river system, we only get what's left over. And Centre Alliance will fight to ensure that we get as much water in South Australia as we can, not only for the environment, but for those families who depend on our river system for their livelihoods. Another issue I'm incredibly passionate about is supporting our dairy farmers here in South Australia. When the dollar milk wars began all those years ago, many people cried out and said this will be a bad thing, not only for the dairy industry, but for consumers in the long run. By placing a dollar value on milk, we were undervaluing our product, and as a result, that had a direct consequence on the amount of money that our dairy farmers were bringing in, and we are seeing people leaving the farm in record numbers. We really can't afford to have that happen in South Australia. We are our own food bowl and we need to protect that, and Centre Alliance will be fighting to ensure that we are supporting the families who are feeding not only our state but our country. Something that I know I didn't realise straight away was that it's not only the dollar price that was placed on milk that was having a massive impact on farmers. It was also things like cheap home branded cheese and yoghurt and ice cream, all of those other dairy products that are just staples in Australian fridges and freezers across the country. We need to make sure that our dairy farmers are receiving a fair price for all of those products, and really that fight can start with us as individuals. If your budget can afford it, the next time you're at the shops, try and support a branded product, from cheese, from yogurt, ice cream, milk, and try to avoid those supermarket brands, because that will mean you are helping to support South Australian dairy farmers. Authorised by S. Kokoski Moore for Centre Alliance, Unleashed, South Australia 5061.